Advisory Committee meeting number 7. Isn't it great to be back in person? Seriously, I mean, we've had 6 meetings online. And just for your information, we're not doing this as a hybrid. This is totally in person. The only reason why we have our technology set up is so that we can record it, and so that the recording can be made available for anybody else to view it after today's meeting. But we don't have any online participants. Okay. So anyhow, happy to see you all in person. Super excited for this meeting. I'll call this meeting to order at 2:07. My name is John Katehira, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. Okay, just a quick look at our agenda. These are the agenda items that we're going to be discussing today. I'll start with roll call. I understand we have a few of our committee members absent, but we do have 5 people here. So when I call your name, please say here or present. First, we have Steve Chang, present. Thank you, Steve. Suzanne Jones. Here. Thank you, Suzanne. Ken Kawahara. Ken Kawahara is not here today. He notified us earlier that he had a conflict. Emmett Kinney. Here. Thank you, Emmett. Brennan Morioka and James Nakatani were unable to attend today's meeting as well. Cynthia Resented. Here. Cynthia, thank you. And Trisha Kehalani Watson. Here. Thank you, Trisha. Okay, so we have 5 of our Landfill Advisory Committee members present today. Just a real quick peek at our schedule of meetings. So today we are at meeting number 7. We've gone through 1 through 6 over the last, 6 months or so, and we're very close to the finish line. We only have 1 more meeting after today, and that's going to be in June. So we're almost out, gang. Almost out. I did want to point out that for those who are really paying attention, we shared this slide, I think, at meeting number 1. And this slide kind of just represents that this is a process. This whole landfill siting responsibility is a process. And the LAC meetings that we're having right now, even though that's about to be finished, that's still the first step in this long process. The reason why I bring this up is because I know there's been some neighborhood board discussions recently about landfill siting and their concern about it's too late to get their input in. I just want to put it on record that this LAC meeting set of meetings is just one step. So there's going to be lots of future opportunities for public to participate in this project moving forward, namely on the EIS side. Yeah? So we all know that there's a lot of public participation on the EIS side.
I have a question. Isn't that too late, though? I mean, I just want to put on the record, I share that concern from the neighborhood boards. I understand it's a process, but I have serious concerns about the lack of transparency and opportunity communities have had to weigh in. So I don't know that I agree that an EIS level process offers the same opportunity as the decision-making we're doing now.
Thank you very much for that, Trisha. I will remind everybody, for those who might be viewing it, this meeting after the fact as well, that after every single LAC meeting, the meeting has been posted on the city's website, available for anybody to view and to provide comments on. So in that regard, even though we have to struggle with these meetings being online, we did try our best to make this as transparent a process as possible. So with that, moving forward. Okay, so the next item on today's agenda is oral comments on all agenda items. Before we proceed, we would like to remind everyone in this meeting that today's discussion is being recorded. Again, the recording will be posted on the Department of Environmental Services website. You can find it at honolulu.gov/opala/new landfill. Or really, if you just Google new landfill Honolulu, you can probably get there as well. So this meeting will be posted shortly after today's meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, you can always find information from previous meetings, and all of the work to date is also online. So if you just go to that website, click on the hyperlinks, you can find any and all information that we made available during this Landfill Advisory Committee process. Okay, so here are the procedures for oral testimony. First, we will take public comments from each registered person, and I understand we only have one person registered for oral comments today. Next, each speaker will be asked to approach this corner. So these two bodyguards right here are going to move off to the side and do your public testimony from this point here. The reason why here is so that you can face the committee members as well as be near enough to a microphone so that we can capture your statement on recording. Okay, before you do your oral comments, please state your name and identify which agenda item you're speaking on. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and when reminded of the time limit, please conclude your remarks as promptly as possible. If you did not register but wish to provide comments, please raise your hand, be acknowledged by me, and approach the committee to speak next to the microphone. Okay, so we only have one registered person to provide comments today, and this is Jay Sturtevant. Jay, come up, please. Right here is the mic. We move quickly over here.
Oh, yeah.
There's a basketball game this afternoon, so we're trying to keep this thing going.
Well, I appreciate that. All right. Hello, aloha. My name is Jay Sturtevant. I am the Integrated Resource Program Manager at Pearl Harbor National Memorial and Honolulu National Historic Site. And I was asked to be here today by our Park Superintendent, Hanako Wakaski-Chong, for Honolulu National Historic Site. Hanako is currently on leave, and so she asked me to be here in her stead. I guess our comments currently are, we are pleased to be a part of the planning process and hope that we can work with the committee and the team, the planning team, moving forward to help find a suitable location for the landfill. The park does have some significant concerns about one of the potential locations that is on the doorstep of the park, Honolulu National Monument or National Historic Site. And so I just wanted to brief the committee quickly today on the significance of the park and some of our concerns about the landfill being near the park. Honolulu National Historic Site preserves and commemorates the Honolulu incarceration camp that was used during World War II from 1943 to 1946. That camp held over 360 Japanese American citizens and over 4,000 Japanese and German POWs. And it was a significant, especially for the Japanese American citizens, a significant tragic event in our history, and the park is there to preserve that, the archaeological and cultural landscape of that history, and provide opportunities for the public to engage and connect with that place and foster a place of healing for the community and the public at large. And so the park was created in 2015 part of a presidential proclamation through the Antiquities Act for President Barack Obama, and then it was changed to a National Historic Site in 2019 through Congress and legislation that was passed. And so the park exists now as a National Historic Site. We are working on standing that park up, and as you might imagine, standing up a new national park unit is a lot of work. So we have a long ways to go and a lot of planning to make the park a really part of the community and function as a national park like most people expect when they go to a national park site. And so we being a part of this process and feel that that it is critical for the park in order to meet its mission to be able to preserve a sense of isolation and a sense of place that can help tell this historic story along the Honolulu drainage. So I think with that, I don't know that I have any other comments today, but we are certainly available to have discussions or if anyone has any questions for us, and I'm sure we'll see folks at another meeting. Thank you for providing me the time.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for Jake?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So I'm on the committee, but I'm also SOI qualified, and I own a CRM firm, so I certainly appreciate, I will say that was a factor for me. Is there any plans to expand the site, like, or are the boundaries as they stand now, sort of the extent, the geographic extent?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have right now at the park is essentially a situation with two variables.
Mm-hmm.
We have the authorized boundary for the park, which Congress has established, but we don't own all the land within that boundary yet. So I think what you might be asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is will we expand the boundary again beyond what Congress has set?
Or if there's any potential for that going forward.
Okay, because we are working on land acquisitions for our current boundary. I have not, no, I've only been in my job since September, but I have not heard of any discussion of expanding the boundary beyond the current legislative boundary.
Okay.
And that would have to happen with an act of Congress or another monument designation.
What do you feel, and if you don't have an answer to this off the top of your head, an appropriate boundary would, so there's the boundary of the park, and then what do you talked about sort of the relative isolation, what would that boundary be to you folks?
So that can always be a difficult challenge for any park or historic site. You know, how far out do you draw the circle around a place? And this is something that our other parks that are commemorating the Japanese American experience and the Japanese American incarceration are wrestling with in other parts of the country. So I don't know if I have a specific answer, but I think, you know, for us, it's really a question of how do we work with our surrounding partners in order to provide the benefits and meet the mission that Congress has set out for us to do. And you know, we are legislated and directed to work within our boundary. And so outside of our boundary, we really have to, you know, make sure that folks are aware of the significance of the park and how things on the outside can impact the park and maintain that historic story. So I don't know that I had a real good answer to that, but you know, having spent the last 2 weeks out there on the ground, I was just out there again this morning working on some field work stuff. I can tell you that there are significant view sheds on the higher elevations within the park where you can really experience the camps themselves and how it was situated in the gulch and get a sense of the broader landscape that connects you to Pearl Harbor and the ocean and the surrounding mountain ranges. So there are significant connections within the park, even though we don't have, you know, it's outside of the park.
Have you done any CLS studies already to date?
We have currently what's called a cultural landscape inventory that's ongoing. That hasn't been finalized yet. It's still in draft. And so in the Park Service, they do a couple different things with cultural landscapes. They have a cultural landscape inventory, which sort of feeds into the database aspect of cultural landscapes. And then they have what's called a cultural landscape report.
Right.
And the report goes into a much more detailed sort of analysis and kind of becomes more of a written publication that cultural landscape.
So you haven't done the report yet, but you've done the inventory that will feed into the report?
Yes, and some of that has been slowed down because of COVID, and they weren't able to get out in the field and kind of do their field assessments and some of their GPS work.
So I think it would be super helpful as this process moves forward, as the CLR becomes available, to make sure that's provided, because I imagine that'll have really critical. Do you have a timeline on when that's estimated to be completed?
Soon. I think we have a draft currently.
Okay.
So we're kind of in the reviewing the draft stage.
Okay.
And again, that is all within the park, though. It doesn't really analyze cultural landscape connections that extend beyond the park.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But we do also have the special resource study for when the park was created. We have a park foundation document, and then there's multiple art blocks.
Yeah, I think that would just be all fantastic data to make sure it's provided to the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being
You're
here.
welcome.
Thank you, Tricia. Any other committee members, questions?
Sorry.
You have a question for yourself?
I have a question. Who do I provide that information to?
The person.
Josh is the man with the plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Send the email as you guys have been, and then we can post it to the website.
Okay.
Any kind of information related to that.
Okay, thank you.
Another question? Okay. Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I look forward to the CLR.
Oh, yes.
I love reading them. They're fun.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to provide oral
If
comments?
not, I know. Oh, I want to come. That'll be allowed? Can I get a tour?
Yes, we could probably set that up.
I would love to see it.
Okay, nobody else from the audience to provide comment? Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Okay, let's move on then. So next on the agenda, we have approval of meeting 6 minutes.
Are there hard copies of the minutes available here for us?
I do not believe so. Those are emailed out.
Sorry, because my email's not pulling up, so it would be helpful.
You need somebody to get you Wi-Fi?
No, I have Wi-Fi. It's just been slow, so
Okay.
I haven't been able to.
So would you like to defer the minute approval until after your?
Yeah, maybe let's defer. I'll read.
Okay.
Cynthia was prepared for that.
All right, I feel like I would be rushing you at this point, but I was gonna ask for a motion. I'll give you a couple minutes to review. Tricia?
Well, I think we can move on, and I can, yeah.
Okay. So may I have a motion?
Oh, no, I meant move on past this item, and we can come back to it, yeah.
We're gonna just switch the order then, is that all right, Josh? We're gonna jump to the next thing, which would be the presentation itself, or would you rather we can recess while Tricia reviews the minutes? Up to you.
Yeah, I think it's better to take a recess.
Take a recess?
And I can read fast. Zip into it. Okay, make the call for them, you can call for it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so again, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the committee meeting, number 6, held March 7th, 2022?
I'll move.
Thank you, Cynthia. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor to approve the minutes from meeting 6, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. Okay, the ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much.
I have a question. I requested, and it's in the minutes, that Corp Counsel be here. Is Corp Counsel here?
No, Core Council is not here, and,
Josh, why don't you come up to the microphone so everybody can hear you?
Core Council is not here today. Basically, Core Council represents the city and is not providing a representative for the LAC. And so they provide us advice in between meetings, but have not been attending meetings and do not plan to.
Okay.
So Josh, is it correct to say that the concerns discussed during meeting 6 were discussed with Corporation Counsel, and we have responses for them here today?
Yes.
For the committee members,
Yes.
okay.
So I'll just note, I also called OIP, and I don't feel like some of the concerns I brought up throughout the meetings have been adequately discussed, but we can talk about it offline. So it's why I asked Corp Counsel to be here. Okay.
Thank you. Might as well stay here because you're up next. Okay, so we're going to jump into our presentation section. We have 2 presentations to make, and then followed immediately after that, we're going to have a presentation and discussion section. We have 2 presentations and discussions to happen in that section as well. So for now, I will turn it over to Josh Nagashima, Project Manager, Refuse Division.
So I want to bring up, since the first point is the one I called OIP about, I still have concerns about any of this being done anonymously. So I think there needs to be an actual formal request to OIP as to if any part of what the work we do here can be done anonymously. And I know it's come up from the very first meeting, but I don't feel like it's been adequately addressed and resolved. So I just want to, then I'm done with it, but yeah.
I can put in a request to
Yeah,
OIP,
please.
but the response that CORE provided was that because it's a method, means and methods, not the actual scores, that we know what the scores are, we're able to show the scores, but because we don't know who put in the scores were put in anonymously, we cannot reveal what we don't know, basically, and it's a means and methods kind of.
Yeah, and my concern is it really goes against the spirit of the Sunshine Law that any of this would be done anonymously, right? So that just remains my very serious concern with sort of the process. But yeah, go on.
Okay, yeah, we can put in an application, as you suggested. Okay. Before I start, I wanted to address your other concern about, being public and opening it up to the public as far as public comments go. We've had all these meetings open to the public. We have the website. We did the poll in the beginning as well to get public comment and tried to advertise that. And we've been taking comments as much as possible, and we're trying to make it open. I really wanted to make it open because we want to hit all the problems up front. So I'm willing to talk to you, Tricia, offline, if you have any suggestions on how we can do that better. We're always willing to do that better and get out there. So I'm sorry if you felt that way. Okay, getting into the presentation. So I just wanted to remind everybody about how we were doing the scores before I get into the scores themselves. So we started with the LAC submitting their weights after meeting number 5, and those weights were submitted blindly, so the sites were not known at that time. So these were for the criteria, and it was done anonymously through Microsoft Forms. So when the scores came in, the spreadsheets were shared, so you can see it through the spreadsheets, but it basically lists every line as anonymous as to who entered it. After the weights were entered after meeting 5, after meeting 6, the subjective criteria ratings were submitted by the LAC. So the subjective criteria are the ones that are based on experience, opinions, and that was done anonymously as well. And then the objective criteria, about the same time, we were determining what the objective criteria ratings were based on the measurable parameters, because the objective criteria are based on facts, measurable distances and such, and we were able to calculate the objective criteria from that. And then using those ratings and weights, we then calculated the scores for each criteria for each site by using this basic formula, which is the score is equal to the average weight times the average rate. And to get the scores for each site, we took the sum of all the criteria scores, individual criteria scores for each site, summed that up per site to get the final scores, and the rankings were determined by the final scores. The spreadsheets were provided to the LAC with all the ratings, all the weights. There were 2 separate spreadsheets, actually, the weights, and then the ratings, subjective ratings, and the calculations for the scores. That is also posted online at our website, so if you'd like to view that, you can do that there. And that was just a sample, sorry. Also, as a reminder, this is a map with the potential sites, so that we had 6 sites in various areas. So, Area 2, Site 1, Area 3, Sites 1 through 3, Area 6, Site 1, and Area 7, Site 1. So those are the 6 sites that we have. So getting into the objective criteria portion. So again, just a reminder of the definition of objective criteria, It's based on unbiased, quantifiable facts and observations, and is not influenced by personal feelings, prejudices, perceptions, or desires.
Where does that definition come from?
Sorry? Yeah, on dictionary on the internet. Okay. Again, another reminder, these were the weights that were entered for the objective criteria. These are the averages of all the LAC members who entered. There were 6 members who entered their weights. These were the averages for the objective criteria. So at the top, the no-pass zone, municipal wells within 1,000 feet. I'm going to show the portions of the spreadsheet. I know it's just a bunch of numbers at this point, but I just kind of wanted to go through basically how it's calculated. So you can see the weight there at the top, and then for each of the sites and each of the criteria running across the top, you can see that there were numbers entered by the LA. Oh, sorry, this is the objective. So these are the numbers that were determined based on the measurable criteria. So of note, you may note like time has all the same values. We didn't find any sites that were owned by owners that might take additional time, that we could obviously determine took additional time. Another thing you might notice is the IAL land. So there were 4 sites that were not in IAL land, important agricultural land, and there were 2 sites with them. So those sites got 0. While the sites that were not in important agricultural lands got a full score of 6. Those were binary, those last 3. So if they were in the no-pass zone, for instance, as well, which all the sites are, they get a score of 0 because they're within the no-pass zone. If they weren't, they would get a full score of 6. And for the wells within 1,000 feet, there were 4 sites within wells, municipal wells within 1,000 feet. Those are just some highlights. So using the weights and then the ratings that were calculated, we get the scores. So this is just to show you kind of the magnitude of the scores that are going in to the final calculation for the scores. And at this point, with just the objective criteria considered, the top site right now is 6.1. I'll get into the full ranking as we get further on. And opening it up for questions from the LAC.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm just one clarification. So if all the landfill sites are above the no pass and they get a rank 0, that sort of means that that issue is just not really included in the
Correct, yes.
evaluation because it's the same for every location.
Yeah, it basically becomes a wash.
Right, even though it is the highest weighted issue in importance.
Correct.
And it's one that we've brought up at every meeting as being unacceptable. Okay.
Yeah, so I think what you're getting at is that, it should weigh heavy on the score and show that the site is not eligible in a sense, right? So in the end, I will show the maximum scores, the maximum score that the site could have gotten. And so you can compare the sites that got scored with the maximum score to see basically how it played out for the criteria, if that makes sense. And then that can be what the recommendation is based on.
Josh, if I can also add, sorry for interrupting, but Suzanne, to your concern, I know that's been a very sensitive issue for a number of meetings now. Later on, we will talk about the opportunity, in spite of what the scoring results show, there will be an opportunity for each of you as committee members to to write a statement saying that you know, basically are very concerned and would not like the landfill to be placed over the drinking water aquifer, for example. So that opportunity will be there, and it's going to be highlighted in the report as well.
Any further questions?
I just want to echo the concern, but, yeah, I just want to support what you said.
All right, so we're moving on to now the site scores and rankings. So moving on into the subjective criteria. So these are the weights for the subjective criteria that were entered in after LAC meeting number 5. Ecological areas was the top and things was on the bottom. Again, 6 of the 8 LAC members in this weight, and these are the averages of their weights. Similar to the objective criteria, these were the subjective criteria entries. However, these were entered by the LAC members, and then the averages were taken afterward to do the calculation. Oh, sorry, these are the averages of the LAC number entries, sorry, per site. And perfect. Oh, and yeah, of note, 8 out of 8 LAC members did enter subjective criteria ratings, so we did get all members entered. And these are how the scores weighed out of the subjective criteria. 3.1 ended up being the highest scoring point. Okay, so now kind of getting into the final scores. So these are how all the sites weighed out after taking the sum of both the objective and subjective criteria scores. So the first site is area 6.1. I'm going to run through these individually, actually. So, but these scores are rounded to their whole number. So kind of going backwards in ranking. So area 2, site 1, was ranked number 6. Linear Wailoa Road.
And Josh, this was the KS land, right?
Sorry?
This is the Kamehameha Schools land, so it ranked lowest.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Okay. The map of Area 3 has Area 3 sites 1, 2, and 3. Site 3 was ranked number 5. Site 2 was ranked number 4. And Site 1 was ranked number 3. So ranks 5 through 3. Rank number 2 was Area 7, site number 1. We're calling this one Kapolei Waipahu near Kunia Road. So it's off Kunia Road, in a Kapolei zip code, but there are sites in the area that is closest to Kunia. So
Was this the Honolulu proximity site? Okay, yes. I'm just trying to maintain my bearings. Okay.
And then site rank number 1 is Area 6, site 1. We're calling it Wahiwa near Kunia Road. It's in the Wahiwa zip code. Any discussion related to that? Any questions?
So I have questions. So my understanding of what we agreed to as the process would, setting aside the no path line, which I have total issue with, and that's separate. The top 3 would move forward to the EIS? Is that?
That's what we're considering, yes.
That's what would be, if, assuming we don't throw all of these out because of the water issue, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, let me see if I can clarify that. It's not whether we throw them out. I mean, we can put whatever we want into the report, but the final decision is the mayor.
Correct.
So we can recommend all of them be thrown out, but he can say, okay, too bad, so sad, I'm gonna pick this one.
Correct, yes. And he could go out of order.
I just wanted to,
So in theory, and just on a Moli Plana Park Service is here, so where Honolulu is ranked 2nd. But say at the final wash, and that's what I'm trying to understand, like where do we weigh into this? If we said we want 7.1 ranked lower, because we don't think Honolulu's, the proximity to the national park is appropriate. Where do we have that discussion, right? Is that a now discussion? Is that going to things we write in? How does that work? Because I can't imagine, in just in all reality, we're going to put something in proximity to a national park in the mix. So, I mean, I'm just trying to understand how we could potentially take that into consideration, or where that would come in. Or maybe it doesn't matter at all, right? So,
Yeah, so in the last section today, or second to the last section today, we're gonna talk about the report content. So
Okay.
at that point, we're gonna have the group put forth a recommendation that should be in the report. And that would be where you would talk it out amongst yourselves, you know, what your recommendation as a group would be. And say, you know, one of you disagrees, or you have more comments you wanna add that the group as a whole doesn't agree on, then, as John mentioned, you'll be able to submit those individual comments as well.
okay,
And that will be included in the report.
okay.
Josh, it's John again. So, sorry for interrupting. While you transition to the next presentation, just especially for those who might be viewing this at a later time and may not have followed all the other meetings prior to this one, if you folks are wondering why some of the sites are called like Area 6, Site 1, or anything like that, it's because initially when we started this effort, there were, I think initially 12 areas, and then it got whittled down to 7 areas. And within each area, which is a huge area, they were trying to find the most appropriate landfill site within each area. So that's why we have funky naming, right? Like Area 6, Site 1. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear to everybody. We didn't purposely try to get everybody confused. It was a weed out process that led us to this naming. Okay, that's it, thanks.
All right, so Mike is gonna be the next one to present. Was there another comment?
I have one last question, and again, don't hit me, I'm just asking the question. Is there a reason why Manalo Gulch expansion wasn't placed? I mean, I saw the letter that came in. Why wasn't that one of the 7? Or why was that not added as a 7th?
Well, it's been decided by the city that we won't be pursuing an extension to the 2028 deadline.
Okay.
And,
Oh, no, I mean, like, why isn't expanding Waimanalo Gulch landfill on the table?
we pretty much hit the capacity limit anyway.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, it just, we weren't planning to do it beyond the date, but if we're gonna take C and D, we might run out of time there anyway.
Okay.
In the time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, sorry, Mike is presenting the contents of the landfill advisory.
Sorry, I'm asking you to do my job, but so Mike Kaiser is with HDR, he's the consultant hired by the city to do the analysis on the land.
So our next step in the process is we're gonna develop a draft landfill advisory committee report. It's basically gonna describe the process that the LAC and the city engaged in deciding and ranking the landfill, potential landfill sites. We're gonna gather all the information necessary, that was produced during 7 or 8 meetings, and pull them together in a report. Basically, we want to become a record of recommendations that will be presented to the mayor. So we put together an outline of the report. Obviously, we're gonna have an executive summary, and it's gonna include the list of chapters there, or sections there. I'm not gonna walk through each one. So we're gonna, section 2 is gonna be an introduction. We're gonna talk about, sort of the state of the solid waste management system on Oahu. We're gonna talk about the needs of the landfill and how through history it's led up to this, pull this committee together to cite potential sites. Section 3, we'll talk about the landfill advisory committee, how it was formed, their role. We'll obviously share the committee names and bios in the report, unless you don't want your name and bios in the report. We'll give an overview of the committee's process, and we'll
also include some of the city's public outreach that they, you get during the process. Section 4, we'll talk about the identification of the potential landfill sites, how we use the GIS system to narrow down the locations of the sites, and the areas that, the 4 areas that have the final 6 sites that we presented here today and throughout the process. We'll share some of the past landfill siting studies and the other parameters that, and restrictions that we're focused on. Section 5, we'll talk about the site scoring methodology, the evaluation criteria, subjective and objective, and present the data and information to the board. Josh presented today. Final section, we'll have the results of the scoring process, site rankings, provide committee recommendations. Josh is also going to put together a community business section where he starts the outreach process. We're going to have appendices. It's going to probably include all of the landfill LAC meetings, probably 1 through 7. We'll have other appendices with other information if needed. We're also going to provide a section there for the individual LAC members to write statements.
Yeah, I did want to read a statement related to that, just so I don't forget anything about why we ended up doing this, why we ended up soliciting comments from individual LAC members. So at LAC Meeting 6, there was a discussion about the city paralleling the current LAC effort with an effort to submit a request to the LUC to request an extension for the landfill site naming deadline. After LAC Meeting 6, it was determined that the extension request process is more complicated than initially thought. Therefore, ENV would like to invite the individual members of the LAC to provide written statements. These statements will be included in the appendix, as Mike mentioned, in the LAC final report for reference at the appropriate time. The statements can summarize the hardship and concerns committee members have with naming the new landfill site. And that's outside, again, of the recommendations that are put forth by the group in the report.
So the process again, so this is LAC meeting number 7. We're going to draft a report. We're hoping to have the report ready by mid-May, a month and a half from now. We'll present that report to the committee and give you time to review it and prepare comments, discussion, and bring those discussion comments to meeting number 8 and share them together. Based on the comments, we'll prepare a final draft and a final report that will go to the mayor.
Who's writing the report? You, or is Wilson Okamoto involved in that too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Together we're, Josh and I are.
I have a question. It seems that the LAC members, our comments will be included in the appendices. How will the report, the body of the report, reflect the extensive discussion and controversy that occurred at every one of our meetings with regard to the current options all being over the aquifer and presentations by the Board of Water Supply and all of that discussion? Because it seems that we're being relegated to the appendices for this issue as opposed to it being discussed in the body of the report.
Well, I want to respond to that. Can't we vote as a committee to make a recommendation that it be none of the sites? Don't we have that power to move right now and say, this is the ranking, but we don't feel any of these sites are appropriate? Wasn't that something we were told last meeting we were able to do?
You don't actually have to make a motion. So if the discussion here, and maybe we can have all of the LAC members weigh in at this point to see if that's what the LAC would like to do as a whole. And if that's the case, then that is what can be written into the recommendations. And to answer your question a little more, those discussions were captured in the minutes, which will also be included. But we can also include any highlights to that in the recommendations portion.
The minutes of the meeting are attached in the appendices, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this whole discussion, all of our comments are relegated to the appendices. I'm asking, in the body of the report, where is there a discussion, or where is it going to be reflected, this controversy over having these landfill options all above the no pass? So this is deviating from past selection processes. So where is it going into the report why the city is considering these sites now? Is there going to be a discussion about, you were backed into a corner with Act 73, there were no other options, we had to look at this, and we presented this to the Landfill Advisory Committee, and they were very uncomfortable with it. Is that going to be reflected in the body of the report somewhere?
Yeah, so that whole process with all the laws and all that will be captured here, how we narrowed down what sites were available.
Captured where?
So that will be captured in section 4, sorry. So that's the factual portion. You know, what laws we were dealing with, what limitations we were dealing with. That'll all be captured here. As far as the recommendations or comments related to that, we can add that in 6.3. So that's really, you know, based on discussions today, we'll have that portion written based on the discussions that happened at the other meetings, based on the minutes. And then when we provide the draft to the LAC, he'll be able to provide comments to us individually, not within the group, of course. And then we can tailor it a little bit more to put forth that final draft for you to review.
So I have a question, so they're not here though, right? If we're following sunshine, the bodies that here, so I want to go back to, if we move and are able to pass out with a majority of the people who are present, we have quorum. Why wouldn't the recommendation be that we're recommending none of these sites? Right? Couldn't we do that?
Sorry if I wasn't clear. So if all of you believe that the recommendation should be that we don't consider any sites due to the, sorry, is that?
Yeah, I that's not the motion, but like something finesse to that extent, right? Like the committee, and I don't know how it would be worded, so I would perhaps defer to Suzanne on that, but I mean, I think her point is well made, right? Like there needs to be, I want it to be clear that we're not recommending a site above the no pass line. So I don't know, but I mean, that seems like.
Dr. Roger Babcock walked up, so I'm guessing he has something to say.
Dr. Babcock, solve all our problems forever, please.
Roger Babcock, EMB Director. And if it's weird that I'm talking like this, it's mainly for the microphone. I will try to point out, for record purposes, I know I'm pointing out the obvious here live in person, but go ahead, Roger.
Sure, thanks. I just wanted to make a couple of clarifying statements. So there was a question about, first of all, why Waimanalo Gulch expansion was not considered. And the reason for that is the order in the special use permit that requires the mayor name a new site by December 31st of this year, and that the Waimanalo Gulch will close permanently in 2028 and receive no further waste after that. So that's why that option is not on the table. That's an essential first starting point for this LAC. With respect to the recommendations, so there was a section, sorry, I can't see it anymore, section whatever it is, it says committee recommendations. That's what you write. So it says whatever it is that you recommend, it's that section. So I believe we're going to draft something, but it's your recommendations. It's not ours. So there was kind of a question, it's like, it made it sound like this is the city recommendations. No, this is not city recommendations. This is the Landfill Advisory Committee final report. It is your recommendations that's in that section, right there, section 6.1. That makes sense.
So just please correct me if I'm wrong, Doug. I thought the LUC did allow for the consideration of expanding the Waimanalo Gulch.
It does not.
Okay.
It says it will close I believe March
Second.
2nd, 2028, and shall receive no notice at that time, of any kind. And the site ranking, there was another question about the site ranking, if we think something should be different. The site ranking and the scores are completed at this point, and they cannot be changed. They're based on the process that was followed, and the scores are what they are, as you have seen. And that will be what's in the report. You can disagree with it, however it was done, or whatever you want, and have that be in the recommendation. You can also write whatever you want of any length, and that will be put in the appendix. All this information will be in the final report, which will go to the mayor, and then the mayor will use whatever process he decides to decide what to do next. But he does have the deadline of submitting something to the state land use commission by the end of this year, on the 31st, and he will presumably do that. I'll still be here.
Dr. Babcock?
Yes.
Just, I want to hear it personally. So ENV will not be pursuing a district boundary amendment for the Waimanalo Gulch site.
Right now, the ENV has no intention of doing that. But what happens next is up to the mayor. All I can say is that if the mayor tells us to do something, then we'll have to do that.
Which leaves this whole thing open. It's an open switch, in my mind.
Yeah, well, it's an important step in the process of identifying a new site, is to create the committee and obtain recommendations for what the mayor should do. What the city should do. It's a valuable piece of the process. Thanks.
Essentially, as we talked about, we were all put in a difficult position with Act 73 and the groundwater situation. But, assuming that's what you want captured in the report, we can have that. Yeah, and like,
The LAC, we were then put into the position of evaluating these sites based on other criteria, when the single criteria that we found unacceptable for all the sites was that they were all above the no-pass line. So then we kept moving further into the process and evaluating these sites based on other criteria, when the one criteria that we feel is the most important one is a wash.
essentially, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
which is what we actually discussed numerous meetings ago, but we were asked to continue with the process so that you would have an evaluation. And now we're looking and saying, we're not comfortable with any of these locations. We don't find any, we didn't take a vote, and I understand that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak for
No, I'm with you.
everyone, but I'm looking down at Emmett
Well,
and,
that was my understanding coming out of meeting number 6 as well, is we proceed with ranking, and ranking is not the same as recommendation. And our recommendation would be none of these sites are.
so we could vote that today, and then what?
As I mentioned, you don't even have to vote it. I think Stephen Chang is the only one we haven't heard from regarding that. If you agree that, then that would be the recommendations that are placed in the report.
So if we were to vote that none of these sites are acceptable to the members of the LAC, doesn't that then render the rest of this ranking sort of a moot issue?
Well, they're still gonna have to put it in a report which says committee recommendations is we don't recommend any of these sites based on whatever, but it's still gonna have to result in a report going forward.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, the report will document the process and the results. And then, again, it'll be up to the mayor to make the decision on that.
I'd like to vote. I'd like it in the record. I'd like action taken.
Okay. You're welcome to make a motion.
Go ahead, and
No,
I'll
look at you,
second
I
it.
laughed when got beaten
No,
up.
you phrase them
You're not
so
gonna
much
get-
better than I do.
So I would just move that the committee recommends that none of the 6 proposed sites are acceptable due to their location in proximity to the no-pass line.
I second that.
So I guess it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, for the record, sorry, Tricia moved and Suzanne second. Any discussion?
I have one. Okay, so, Act 73 is actually a law that says you cannot build this within a certain distance from certain locations, right? But the no-pass zone is a policy, right? And so, yeah, it is within our best interest to follow that policy. But there is also a possibility to say, if we have no other choice, and there is no place we can put a landfill, what do? Do you go ahead and go back and say, all the sites that were in the no-pass zone, which one represents the least threat to our community, and consideration to move forward with that? That's also an option, right? Because we have placed landfill over no-pass zone in the past, right? Now, there's a question of, can we comfortably say a landfill built in this location is absolutely going to protect the environment? We have had, unfortunately, examples where bad management or just dumb things happening that exacerbate the problem and made it a threatening issue. But I think, somewhere along the lines, if nothing is available, you got to go back and say, look, we have to pick the lesser of evils, or basically say we're not going to have a landfill, and potentially in the case I've experienced, major disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes and stuff, where you have huge amounts of material that you have to get rid of. What are you going to do? Pile it up in Kaimaki at the UH and stuff, or so those are some considerations. Right.
But I think there's a couple things, Steve, is that even if we vote that in good conscience, we can't recommend a new landfill be placed above the no-pass line.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, and that's going to get me in a lot of trouble here, but I'm assuming that all this information that we went through today, the ranking and the whatever, is still going to be in the report. So our recommendation is, we don't like any of these sites. You figure it out.
Yeah, ultimately, someone will have to do that.
Ultimately, the mayor has to determine what he's
Right.
going to do. Either he's going to take the recommendations, that none of us like it being above the no-pass line, and he's going to have to go figure out whether he's going to go for a district boundary amendment to keep Waimanalo Gulch open, which I'm not in favor of. But he's going to have to either do that or figure out which of the 6 sites he's going to select based on all of the ranking and whatever weighting that we've done. I don't think there's going to be no options for him in that sense. The question becomes one of, what do we believe as citizens who live here, who are representing our constituents, whatever that constituent base is, in our belief as to the betterment for the entire island. And, you and I can go around in circles. There are technologies out there that so far I haven't heard come out of ENV yet, that are being looked at elsewhere, which doesn't do landfills as much as it does other kinds of composting, which isn't as nasty as the kind of composting that we're used to. But I don't hear anything. We've already been down the plasma arc type of scenario. We know that doesn't work on this large-scale basis. We see it in small scale, but they can't
But we are
produce
talking
it.
predominantly
But
of an
again,
autofill.
those are all the things that are still not being looked at. And as far as a tsunami or a hurricane hitting us and having mountains of trash, the SWIMP has that. It's in their iSWIMP, their integrated solid waste management plan that says, worst comes to worst, and again, this hits my community again. It goes to Nanakuli PVTB location, which we stopped PVT from expanding into. So if nothing else, it ends up back in my community again. So,
That was actually meant to only be a temporary storage site.
I get it, but it still ends up back in my community until we figure out what to do with it. So, you know, I know where you're going with it, but there are plans in place.
Yep.
I don't necessarily agree with them, because again, you're gonna overburden the communities that I'm in, who's already overburdened, but there are plans for that. So that, I think, is off the table.
So I agree with Cynthia. I also want to add, in the recommendations, I don't want to just say, you know, so I know there's a motion on the table, but I don't want it to be just, we don't think any of these, right? I still think there's the option of amending Act 73. I also don't know why federal lands weren't put on the table. So I believe there are numerous sites that are under federal control that aren't below, right, that are below the no pass line. So I also think there should have been more of a discussion as to the initial criteria. I know we weren't involved in establishing those, but I think I would want that to be specifically in the recommendation as well, so I think that's secondary. But, and I had a third point, and it's the next topic, it's the community benefits. To Cynthia's point, I don't want to see, wherever this lands, right, Hawaii Kai, Kahuku, I don't want a community benefit package that only benefits the community it's going into. I think there should be a community benefit fund that also allows support to the Waianae community who's held this burden for decades. So I really don't want to see a scenario, even if we're able to find a site outside of Waianae, and I think it should be outside of the west side. But I want to make sure that, I mean, the technology is going to be better going forward. There's going to be less impact. But this community is still going to be carrying the burdens of all of this for decades to come. So that was a separate soapbox I had saved for later, but I'm going to just throw that in now. But I don't think the recommendation is no. I think the recommendation is no, these are the things you should be looking at as an alternative.
You know, as I understood in discussion, it was Act 73 and also the time constraints that were placed upon the process by the LUC that eliminated some potential sites that might have been below the no-pass line.
As well as federal land.
Right. So with a strong recommendation from the committee saying we don't find any of these current sites acceptable, I think it will then give the city some leverage in going back to the LUC and even back to the legislature to say, you've got to give the city more time, and you've also, you know, released them from some of the scheduling so that you can pursue or consider other locations that might be more suitable than the ones that we have before us at the moment. So if we don't take this vote and make a strong statement, I'm not sure if you have as much leverage.
Just my 2 cents worth, and I'm not saying that I disagree with where this is headed. My only concern is, I just saw today, we have 4 new LUC commissioners coming on board. That's 4 out of 9, which means just educating them on this past 20-plus year process and all the ins and outs and debates and who, what, when, where, and how, is concerning to me because of the fact that now we have 4 new people to educate who, and looking at the names, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, I don't believe any of them have necessarily paid as much attention to this entire process that we've gone through for the last 20-plus years. But to educate 4 people, bring them up to speed with this whole thing, and hopefully figure out something to happen before the end of this year is really disconcerting to me. So that's the other side of the soapbox. And unfortunately, and Suzanne and I were talking about this earlier, this process has never been clean since the initial announcement in 1998, where the city said, we're not going to close Waimanalo Gulch like we promised the community we were going to close it, but we're going to expand it. And this whole discussion started in 1998 in this community when that announcement came forward. And that's where this whole thing has been since. It's been blown up since. I know, because I was at that meeting from the beginning.
Yeah, this is all good discussion. We're gonna try to capture the recommendations, if the group agrees. As far as the motion, well, I guess I should mention about federal lands. As I mentioned last time, we did put up feelers to the federal government to look into that. This process is, as Dr. Belkoff mentioned, trying to meet the deadlines that were imposed on us. That was the main impetus for continuing, and that is the track we're on. But yes, based on this discussion, we can come up with a recommendation that the LAC agrees on.
I just want to point out, though, you took off the table state lands that are federally controlled. And I don't think that's the same as federal lands, right? That's not the same process for those lands coming back into use with the state. So again, I think there's, I mean, and I don't want to belabor it at this point. I think if it is truly the committee's recommendation, HDR and Wilson Okamoto have their work cut out, because I do think it is a matter of capturing everything we've said here, plus we've said in the last few meetings. So I would like to see that recommendation language as soon as possible, because I do think if there's opportunity to review it beforehand and then make edits and recommendations and come to the next meeting with those, I don't want that being something we get a couple days before the meeting. I'd like time with it, and I'd like it in a Word doc so we can track changes and edit.
We can provide a Word doc. As Mike presented, we're gonna provide it 2 weeks before the meeting at the very least.
Whoa. 2 weeks before the next meeting is 2 weeks in June. I mean, that means mid-May?
Mid-May is our
That
current
means
plan.
we would get it 6 weeks from now.
6 weeks from now. But we can work on the recommendations first, as suggested, and provide that sooner.
We're not continuing with a vote?
No, I think we are going to
Oh,
vote.
okay.
We are.
Oh, okay.
No,
Check.
I mean, I think Tricia's concern is the same with mine, is we're giving them 6 weeks to go do all of this stuff before we get anything that we can even track change, and 2 weeks later, we're gonna give the final approval for this document
You're
to go
asking for a
forward.
bit more time.
Just for clarification on that, Josh, and correct me if I'm misspeaking, the 6-week schedule was for the actual report itself. But I think what Josh is saying is that if there's pieces of the report that can be rushed and made available for your folks in your review of this discussion, I
Yes.
think that can be provided
Yes.
earlier. I don't know how much earlier, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is 6 weeks is for the draft report in its entirety. Is that correct? Correct. Okay.
Okay.
Sooner is better for the recommendations piece.
Okay.
I agree with
Yeah, we can come up with that piece first.
And then when are you expecting our statement? Is it at the next meeting, or is it prior to that?
After the recommendations are provided, you should have an idea of what's going into the report at that point. We covered the whole process over the course of these 7 meetings, so generally know what was covered, what will be in the report as far as the facts and the process going in. So once you get the recommendations, that should kind of close everything out for you, and then you can produce your statement. And we're hoping to get that by the Sunday before the meeting, so it's by June 5th is the current plan.
That being, because it's an individual statement, we can just simply insert that into the document, so. But if you folks have, I think, a recommendation, as we're talking about as a group today, that's a separate thing.
So you're drafting the recommendation that we're going to review, and then additionally, we will provide individual comments that go into the report. Okay. And right now, we're going to complete the vote. Okay.
I did want to clarify something that Tricia said. What was it? Was it state-owned lands operated?
Those state-owned lands that are leased to the federal government.
Is that different from like conservation land?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's, yeah.
What would be some examples of that?
So what would be what, sorry?
Examples of that kind of land?
The Army lease land. Right, those are all up by 2029 as well, and they're not primarily conservation. So, and I believe there's other ones as well. There's a number of lands though across the island that are state-owned lands that are under leases. So to me, I think there's certainly a discussion to be had that if there is land that is not being fully utilized, I don't know, right? And again, I don't know necessarily where they all are, but some may be below one.
Is Makulu one of those sites?
It is, but I wouldn't recommend,
Yeah,
at least there, but I mean, there's others too. So, yeah, I mean, but I think there's sites, right? I mean, not just that, but there's other sites that I think need to be looked at. That again, I thought could have been put on the table initially. And then the other one would be amending Act 73 to somehow put this in Hawaii time. I said it out loud, I put it on the record.
And this coastal crater at one point in
See,
time.
I'm saying, yeah. I just would like to see more geographic diversity in the plate sites considered. I don't, yeah.
Yeah, just for your knowledge, the federal sites we did put forth were ones that met Act 73, and there weren't very many.
Were there any that would potentially?
There were a couple,
Okay.
3 or 4.
Okay, so where are we? Vote?
One more,
Yes.
so Act 73, what did it take off the table? Of the 6 sites, how many more sites would have been added if we reduce Act 73 from half a mile to a quarter mile?
If it was a quarter mile, when we looked at that, it really only added 1 more site.
Interesting.
Yeah, so even at a quarter mile, it was still
What would
very many.
a change in the law that amended it not necessarily to a quarter mile, but put general zone conservation land on the table? What would that have done?
I don't recall if we looked at that. Yeah.
Because, I
We'll
mean,
have to look at that.
and I think I said this last time, I don't know why you wouldn't put general, like, the general subzones, which are the fairly lowland conservation areas that are primarily invasive species anyway, without a lot of, they don't necessarily have high conservation value. Because I still have concerns that we're putting IALs on the table and not giving equal consideration to general subzone conservation lands. So to me, I would amend Act 73 to say conservation zone insofar as, it's those higher tiers that are being protected, because those are the lands that I think have higher conservation value. The general subzone, I don't believe, has that for the most part, and those are lands that, in my opinion, should be considered.
Josh, in clarification, that quarter mile, it wasn't just half mile, quarter mile to residential areas, that also included commercial areas
No, schools, hospitals,
and residential areas. And that's as crow flies,
Roger, do you want to make a comment?
I believe. Okay.
Sure, yeah, so the federal lands are identified on the map with the exclusions. So they were gray in color, if you remember, so you can see where they are. The restriction on conservation land, all conservation land, is in Act 73.
Right.
That's the law that's covered. So,
that's why I'm saying, like, that's why I would recommend that as an amendment to Act 73, right? That's what
So
it
that's
would
a perfect thing for the recommendation section. With respect to the quarter mile, changing half mile to a quarter mile, my understanding from when we did that was that opened up one site, and it was the PVD site.
No, it wasn't PPT.
It wasn't the site? There's another site.
It was a site of mine.
Oh, my mile.
Wait, which Waimanalo? Gulch or?
Waimanalo.
Not Waimanalo Gulch. Waimanalo.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Not mine, not
Yeah,
mine.
not your Waimanalo, I just trying to know.
Yeah, I thought it
Well, and I guess for me, what I would have loved to have seen in the interactive map, and I know this came up after, was the no path line, right? I think it should have been on this somehow, and I know that's not your folks' fault, and Red Hill exploded in the middle of all of this, but, yeah, again, for the recommendation.
Yeah, the problem with this map, though, is this is only Act 73. This doesn't include all of the other federally required restrictions. So by the time you put the airports in, and the, you know, how far it's apart and everything else, that's why we ended up with what we got.
Right.
So the areas you might notice that are only in gray, I should probably point it on here.
Oh, that's interesting. That would be a good place.
Here. So this location, the Federal Navy has already established bunkers, and they have plans to expand. This is the YPO area. It's not quite big enough
Okay.
as it currently stands.
And the
Then
other
there's
one
this
is
area
they're
here.
putting in a bunch of bunkers.
In Honolulu, but that's near the PVT site.
So the half mile from residences, so if there's a house, two houses, half a dozen houses, then it's at one house and it's out. Were there any areas where that were the case, where it was a very tiny community that was near a potential area?
Let me give you an example of one house. You see that little purple dot on the north shore of Kana Point?
Yeah.
That's one house.
Where are we looking?
On the left.
Up left.
Up at the top, you see that one purple dot by itself? Up at
Right
the
there.
top, to the left. Kana Point.
Left, yeah.
Right there. You see that
Yeah.
one purple dot? That is one house. That's, Victoria Lyman's house. And I know because that was when I was fighting about keeping Kana Point closed from all these idiots mud bogging down there. Because that's where she lived. It was right there at the entrance to the park.
Not that
That's
an
one
accessible-
house.
Not that that's a good place to put a landfill, but
Josh,
No,
does the
but
north
I'm saying that's
site,
from
is that
one
top
house.
just gray, or is it gray and conservation? Right where you are?
Area?
Yeah.
This is gray, but we also looked at the no path zone in that area, and it's very near the coastline, so it's within drinking distance.
Okay.
I only bring up the how many houses because if there was a potentially suitable site except for a handful of houses, there's an eminent domain,
Yeah.
you know,
The problem
buy the
is,
properties.
the problem is most of our housing is along the coastline.
Exactly.
Yeah, most of the coastlines was very highly populated, very developed. Or we can look into it again, you know, and that can be part of the recommendation.
Yeah,
Right.
I think this can all go into the recommendation. So, do we vote? How do we call for the vote? We have no chair.
John?
I'll do that, but for the people that might be viewing this later, so you're showing this right now, right, Josh?
Yeah.
So this should be on the recording. This interactive map is available at honolulu.gov/apollo/new landfill. So you can just click on these tabs and you can turn on or off any of the criteria that is being considered.
And I wasn't sharing earlier, so I'll just point out again, the YPO location, the Emma location, and the Lulu location. Those were the locations that we looked into further. Those are areas outside of the no path zone that are federally controlled.
Josh, if you go to Waipio, what is south of the gray area?
So south of the gray area is the tsunami inundation zone.
Oh, okay.
So, again, we're not going to be allowed a permit within
Okay.
an operating.
And what is in the peninsula that you said they're building bunkers?
In this area, there are bunkers already
They're gonna be
in this area, and they're expanding further west.
Okay.
I think it's emissions out of
Emissions magazines.
It's blast zone, right?
The Navy's not gonna give you that.
Yeah, it's a restricted blast zone area.
Okay. I think I'd rather have a landfill than weapons, but okay. Just wishing made it so.
Okay, so we have that motion on the table. Are we ready to vote? Yeah? Would you folks mind if we just did a roll call vote? Easier? Yeah? Okay, so I'll start with my left to right. So, Emmett, Kitty?
Yes, I vote yes to approve them.
Yes.
Tricia? Cynthia?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Steve?
Can I vote yes with reservation?
Sure.
Okay, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So we have 5 yeses, 1 with reservation. And of course, our other 3 committee members are not here today. This is quorum.
And just to clarify, that motion was that the LAC is not recommending any of the 6 sites that were recommended, or that were scored, because they all lie within the no-pass zone of the Board of Water Supply. And they're making other recommendations, such as looking into other bans.
I think the language was moves that none of the sites are acceptable due to proximity to the no-pass line.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I'm glad she wrote it down, because I have no idea what I said, so thank you, Cynthia. But that sounds right.
And it's recorded too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to be anal like
No, I enjoyed that, thank you.
So Josh, would you like to finish up? I believe there's one last presentation.
Yes, there's one part of the
And
presentation.
as you pull that up, it's now 3:30, so we have about a half an hour left. And I don't want to know the score of the game at any point today, because I'm going to go home and watch it.
Oh, it's basketball.
Fine.
All right. So the last part of the presentation is just kind of a starter conversation on post-community benefits. I know, Tricia, you had already
Yep,
mentioned.
I'm climbing back up on there in a second, so do your presentation, and then jumping back up.
And just to let you know, we did have a discussion also about, providing benefits to the west side for taking on the burden for so long. And that can be a recommendation also by the committee,
It's fine.
so that can be included. So just to kind of define what host community benefits are, so there was an EPA report that I had found. So they defined it as cash payments or in-kind gifts that are paid to a community by the developer for the right to site a landfill within a community's jurisdiction. And then the County of Kauai has had post-community benefits, as many of you may know from the Civil Beat article. The cornerstones of host community benefits are mitigation, alleviation of landfill impacts such as landscaping and revegetation to alleviate visual impacts, and compensation, just payment to offset living near the landfill. So just to give you an idea of what host community benefits are. Okay, so as far as what we're considering, we want to establish host community benefits for wherever the landfill ends up. And we want to establish a committee really to decide what those host community benefits are. We're allowing the LAC to make recommendations for then that committee to decide upon, since they represent basically where the community where the landfill will be. And we want to form this committee as soon as as we can, basically, as early as during the EIS process, after this process is completed, and we name the site. Yeah, we should name the site first, so we know which community we're going in. And as I mentioned, we're requesting suggestions from the LAC.
Okay, so I'm totally jumping back up on my soapbox. So I think your host community package should not only include the community that it's going into, but the community that has historically bore the burden of hosting landfills. I think that's, I mean, I don't want to speak for your community, but like, so you can totally
No.
override me on that one.
No, about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that it should not just be, say if you decide, whatever, Kailua, you need Y&I on this committee, and the benefits should go not only to the prospective community, but the community that has borne the burden. So that would be kind of my big hop up and down recommendation is, because again, like I said earlier, the technology will be better going forward, and presumably there will be less adverse impacts. Y&I has carried this burden for decades. So I think considering that there will continue to be long-term burdens, Y&I absolutely has to be part of the mix, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, let me kind of describe what we actually did for Waimanalo Gulch and what we may continue based on your recommendations. So for Waimanalo Gulch, the city had provided $3 million for nonprofit grants. Those grants were managed, recommendations were made by a 10-member committee of West Oahu residents, and the grants were granted and managed by the Department of Community Services within the city. And $3.5 million was basically managed by city parks for construction on parks on the west side. And all of this was funded by the general fund. So if we were to do community benefits for the west side as well, we could reform a similar committee and see what kind of recommendations they would make.
Josh, will you double check those numbers?
Sure.
And I'll tell you why, because I'm trying to recall, it was $2 million a year
Yeah, it
was
was,
slated for host community benefits package. So you're telling me that this only went for 3 years, and I believe it was a little bit longer than that. And I think part of it, even though it came out of the general fund, was primarily based upon the management from Waimanalo Gulch, from Waste Management. So I don't know if it was all general funds or if they're included WMI funds also. So I'd just like to make sure.
okay, I can double check those numbers. Okay, as far as the outer islands go, I looked into what they had provided for their landfills out there. Checking with Hawaii County and Maui County, sorry, I forgot to adjust that. There were no benefits provided for any of their landfills as far as they knew. Hawaii County was the only other county that had provided some host community benefits, and they started out with $650,000 for the Kekaha community. This is just kind of a map showing you where Kekaha is in relation to the landfill. So the landfill is in this area. So the community is actually fairly close to where the landfill is. Out there, so they provided about $2.5 million worth of community benefits based on the numbers provided by the Civil Beat article. And the Citizen Advisory Committee manages those funds and manages giving out those grants. So they're provided the money and they take applications for grants. In that EPA report I mentioned, and I looked at websites from other jurisdictions, what other recommendations or what other things they were doing as far as host community benefits. So they had free or reduced curbside collection, disposal, and recycling services in some communities. Household hazardous waste drop-off days for the community to eliminate that waste. They had annual spring cleanup, so they would provide containers and management of areas just so people can throw extra trash if they're doing spring cleaning. They also offered rental and container rental and disposal services, and hiring preferences. And their fundings, or fundings recommended by the report, were actually off of a per ton dollar amount, flat dollar amount, or percentage of what was taken in per ton by the landfill. And this is a table from that EPA report. As you might notice, actually zero host community benefit was dominant in the surveys that they did. I think they did over 100 communities for landfills, and it was at 52% for landfills providing them. But the per ton of waste for funding was 31%. So that seems to be providing active community benefit. Okay, open up for discussion. So if the LAC wants to make recommendations, has any questions?
Are we making them now?
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have this discussion again, sorry, at the
Okay.
next meeting as well. So if you have any immediate thoughts or questions, you can ask them now. If not, we'll have the discussion again at the next meeting.
Yeah, you mentioned the Kailua community also, would it extend to them?
So I mean, I think it needs, the host community advisory body should include, oh yeah, I mean, no, so I see your point. Yeah, I mean, I think it should be, sorry, it took me a second. I mean, I think there should be a countywide host community benefit group that not only includes, you know, community within immediate proximity, but communities that already host landfill sites. Because I think, again, right, I mean, I think the benefit is not just perspective. What has been provided by communities also extends backwards. And I think we would be remiss not to be realistic of the fact that there are communities that have already been bearing this burden that haven't gotten any community benefit. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. And then I also very much, and I just want it on the record, I like hiring practices, right? If there is a way to make sure that the local communities that have been bearing the burden get preferences in hiring, and I don't know how to always do that, if you can do that legally, but I think there should be something to create jobs for these communities. I think that's critical.
I think the other thing we need to remember is, and if you go back to the original $3 million and $3.5 million slide, those buckets were what the city told the community they could put the money towards. So the $3.5 million that was for city parks improvements, if you really went back and looked at that, that was more for the city's benefit than the community's benefit. It was like, let me buy a new truck so that I can take more trash out of your community for you, but they needed a new truck anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what we were doing is that fund was actually supplementing the city's need to fulfill their obligations to manage their own business. So I think that from my standpoint, if we're really talking about host community benefits, quit telling the people what they need, they want to use that money for. Let them figure out what's best for their community. I mean, because that's exactly how the last two categories came up. The city said, we're going to work with you to give out so much money to nonprofits, however that was set out. And it was set up for all nonprofits in the area. I get that one. But the one that says that half the money is going to go to the city parks improvements, which should have been part of the city's responsibility to begin with. It wasn't to increase, because I will tell you, the entire time that money was there, we did not get one extra square foot of community park playground area. Not one. And we're already under the city's requirements for the number of acres for city parks in our area. It didn't benefit us in adding any relief just to make it prettier or to handle the management of.
Yeah, and I think those are the kind of pitfalls we want to avoid, and that's why we're asking for recommendations from the LAC. And we really want to give a little bit, we want to establish that host community benefits committee so that they can give us good recommendations as well. You know, not only we decide on what's good for the community.
I'm gonna throw something out there, and you can blow it off. I sit on another advisory committee for the community. When the 110 megawatt peaking power plant came up in Campbell Industrial Park, Hawaiian Electric came to the community and said, okay, what do we want for benefits? One of the things that we got from Hawaiian Electric was $1 million spread over 10 years. We put an advisory council together. We have people from all of the major ahupua'as, from Kapolei to Makaha. And what we did when we first put this pocket of money together was to figure out what did we want it for. And based on energy, based on recycling, based on reforestation, what have you, the group of people that came together put an endowment together through HCF and have them operate the RFP process for us, specifically for intergenerational approaches or organizations that work towards environmental reclamation, recycling, reforestation efforts. Those are our primary concerns for our nonprofit, and that's how the money is fed out. So we decided that that was what was important for that money. I'm saying that whoever sits on this host benefits package council should also put together some sort of a guideline for how this money should be used. It may have nothing to do with what I just said. It may have to do with our schools suck and we want money into the schools, or we want good lighting at all our schools, or we want all our schools to be AC'd. I don't care. I'm not going to tell the communities what's best for them. I'm just saying that you have to allow whoever is going to be on this committee from the community to decide what's best for the communities, not what the city wants to provide money for to alleviate their responsibilities for normal wear and tear and running of the business.
I also think, I agree with all of that. It should be put on the table in endowment, right? Because an endowment is perpetual, right? So instead of you have this limit, I love the idea that they put it in an endowment, because that means it will sustain for years and years to come.
And I'll tell you right now, for ours, our endowment was initial 20%. So we put in the endowment a little bit more than $200,000 and $20,000 a year, over the years. Right now, I think my last report, depending upon which report I look at, that endowment is now somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000. So even though we're not getting $100,000 every year from Hawaiian Electric anymore because our 10 years are up, I can still provide anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000 a year in grants to community right now. And that's with the little bit of money that we had and the way we work with it. So yes, I'm all for endowments.
Yeah.
Are these effective ideas that you're looking to?
Yeah, so we can definitely start with endowment and, looking at the report and how money's been funded. I mean, looking at the per ton charge at the landfill rate are, that would be the continuous source that if, recommended, that would be the continuous source that we can continue to feed forward. So it would, make sure that there's some kind of money coming in and that we're pushing forward every year, instead of it being forgotten about.
So for these packages that are going to be described in the report, are they going to be committee recommendations, or is it going to be city recommendations?
So it's gonna be committee recommendations, and whatever we're discussing today, we'll try to capture in the report. Maybe this is the second section that we're gonna come up with to provide to you all, so you can review and provide more recommendations at that point.
Suzanne, I know you have your hand up. One clarification, Tricia, real quick. So looking backwards in time, I remember looking at this amenities map. I think it was shared at a previous meeting, and it had a lot of landfills. So how far back do you folks think you should go to provide benefits to communities? How far back in time would you folks consider going?
I would say active landfills, right? For communities that currently have active landfills, I would say start there. And then if there's a way, you all seem to be very good at kind of creating weighted criteria. Communities that I think have disproportionately, bear the burden, that bird's gonna kill me. I think they should be considered more, they should be given more. Because again, what I wouldn't want to see happen is you put together this great benefit fund and all this money and all of these things and all these benefits, but Y&I, who again gets left out. And I don't think that's just. So that would be my concern.
Okay. Thank you, Tricia. Suzanne?
So I noted in the presentation on the community benefits that landscaping was included, to mitigate view planes from the landfill. Is that really a community benefit, or is that just basic for operating a landfill, that you would landscape, traffic management, roads improvements, all of those things need to be done in order to minimize the impact of the landfill operations in the area? Is that a benefit package?
Let me answer that one.
Yeah.
Let me answer that one, because that one has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. Mm-hmm. Prior to the community taking the city and Waste Management to close Waimanalo Gulch, Waste Management, with their previous management team, did squat.
Right.
All we got to see was a dirt mound. We got to see all the white plastic bags on our Hale sides every year during windy weather. We got the smell from Waimanalo Gulch, sometimes to the point where even with your windows closed, it was like somebody sucked all the oxygen out of the air traveling on Farrington Highway. Until the community started just raising holy hell with them. Management was never a part of their plan in using funds to be able to mitigate those issues.
So my question still holds, though, understanding that, is it a community benefits package, or is it simply a basic good management of the landfill that it would be included landscaping, roads improvement, traffic management?
I'm saying it should be included as management, not as a benefit for us to take money away from this.
I Josh wants to respond.
Yeah, so you both have good points.
Fine, Josh.
And yes, it is part of the basic needs of the landfill, and we've learned a lot of lessons over time at Waimanalo Gulch. In addition to, the things that I mentioned, we've learned lessons on stormwater, whatever. And we plan to continue with those learned lessons moving forward. So our plan will be, we'll have a litter control plan, more mitigation out front. We'll consider all of that in the design. But one of the benefits that we were thinking the community could get involved, we could present those design packages to the community, and they can provide recommendations, or, maybe the whole community benefits committee, and they can make recommendations.
They would have input as to how they wanted the landscaping done.
Well, I was going to say, I think you just need an advisory body who discusses, right? It shouldn't be part of the community benefits. You should not have funding going for basic mitigation you should already be doing under 343. But there should be some sort of advisory body that does speak to design, right? So you're not doing the typical process where you've designed this thing and then you're dropping it on the community and saying, you should have an advisory body that helps during the design process to avoid adverse effects, right? So avoidance should always be your first track. Then for unavoidable impacts, then there should be mitigation. But again, that shouldn't come out of the community benefit fund. That should just be part of the course of doing the project, that you're properly mitigating for noise, odor, view shed, landscaping. But I think your advisory body should be more than just the community benefit. It should be engaged in the actual design of the site such that you are proactively having this discussion as you're designing the project.
Yeah, correct. I think that was our intent on our part, yeah.
Okay. So one other, there may be a potential there, or some compatibility between, the landfill operation, the landfill property, and, solar parks. There may be an opportunity, if the community is interested, to look into the establishment of solar parks at the landfill, either as areas close or solar panels up in areas that are yet to be used, that could be generating power to offset electrical costs for that surrounding neighboring community. They might find then actually the landfill itself becomes a benefit to them if it's also doing some kind of solar generation.
So that actually is almost in our discussions as well, so that's another possibility. And one of the things that's gonna be unique to this landfill is that half-mile buffer, right, that we have right now, if that stands. And we're gonna have to develop things, we'll be able to use that land. We're thinking about using it partially for, recycling operations. If we can sort of separate materials before they go into the landfill, for instance, we can do that in those areas. But there are other uses that we could do with that to benefit the community.
Well, it just seems if I were living near a landfill operation and I knew that my electric bill was being offset somewhat every month because of the solar generation that was coming from that facility, I might think more positively about the facility being there in my area.
I like that idea. The only concern I have, because this is something that I know happens out over Waimanalo Gulch, is there is so much dust generated. I don't know the impact of the dust on the PV panels. Because currently, I know that Hawaiian Electric, every once in a while, has to literally go shoot their power lines that traverse the landfill to get the dirt off of it because it affects their transmission capabilities.
We can implement some kind of maintenance plan or something like that.
Yeah,
That
they would
would
have to
be
look
the
at,
only
they would have
problem.
to look at that, but it
Yeah.
might be a unique
Yeah,
approach.
yeah. It's just something they'd have to go address.
So, sort of on that same note, what is the plan for the closure and remediation of Waimanalo Gulch? Like, is that part of this too? Because at some point, you need to close it, but I don't want to see it left a dirt pile. Like, is there a plan to remediate that landscape that basically at least does vegetative cover, so you could potentially use it for other purposes down the road? Is that coming as a part?
Vegetative
Okay,
vegetative cover is required
okay.
to prevent erosion.
30
We'll
years,
do that.
supposedly, the city is responsible. They never,
We're doing it within 30 years?
no.
Okay.
No, when they close it, it's like 2 feet of dirt, so much of gravel, so much more dirt, then you put, a geo layer on top of it, more dirt, and then you vegetate and irrigate.
Okay.
They're supposed to maintain it for 30 years. I will tell you, city is piss poor in managing their landfills and their dumps because they don't do that for 30 years.
Okay.
I will guarantee it, and I can show you one that was not taken care of in my community again.
Yeah, we're trying to do better, especially moving forward. That doesn't mean somebody, all the future people who work at the city will think the same, but as far as.
Federal requirement,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
thinking the same, it is a federal requirement.
Federal requirement, well, let's not get into that.
I can pull it out of 258.
It's depending on the course of time, but.
Can we put that in the recommendations as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah.
as you're moving
What I
to,
was gonna say is that, you were mentioning making a whole community benefits package for the Waimanalo Gulch area. They could work with the closure as well, in addition.
yeah.
Yeah, so it all works in tandem.
Yeah, and I want to make sure, like, in the report, that it does articulate that these things should work in tandem, right? What I don't want to see happen, again, is this pivot to wherever this goes, and, like, the Waimanalo Gulch and Waimanalo communities just sort of abandon it. I think I would be unhappy with that outcome. I think we need to make sure that the west side is really taken care of in this.
So Josh, kind of getting back to the report and the committee recommendation section, can it be separated into two parts? So I guess one would be recommendations for the new landfill, and then recommendations for the closure of the
Or the transition.
or something like that. Okay. Okay, any other comments, questions? We're coming up to 4 o'clock right now. If not, maybe we'll try to slam this thing home. Josh, if you don't mind pulling up the slides again. I think we're at announcements. Okay, sorry, bear with me. I'm gonna try to catch up. Okay, here we go. So announcements. Let's see, our next and final LAC meeting is going to be meeting number 8, held on June 6th, 2020, and then I think tentative, also the time is tentative too, right? We're looking at also 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, same like today. And cross our fingers, hopefully we can meet in person again, just like we did today. As discussed, the LAC report will be provided to you folks for review at least 2 weeks prior to meeting number 8. And also, as discussed, specific to the LAC, the committee recommendation section, try to get those sections over to you folks to review in Word format so that you folks can provide edits on the fly. Try to get those to you folks earlier than 2 weeks prior to the meeting. And I see Mike over there sweating already, so pressure's on HDR to get those sections out there. We understand how important they are to you folks. At meeting number 8, there will be additional discussion on the report edit in spirit of the Sunshine Law, so that we can have a nice discussion before finalizing the report. And individual committee member statements, if you wish to provide a statement, are going to be due June 5th. So that's Sunday before the meeting. I will say though, having had this conversation, listening into your concerns and everything, I think the sooner you folks can submit those statements, the better we can capture the committee recommendations.
Wait, I thought we were getting the committee recommendations first for our review, and then we were potentially drafting individual.
You can do that.
Okay.
You can definitely do that, but my point is, like, if you have concerns, for example, we should not put it over the drinking water aquifer. I know that's clear already.
And that's going to be part of the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes.
we want to see how it's articulated
Okay, that's
fine.
in that recommendation
That's
before we then pile on.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so,
That's fine.
all right,
So I guess, yes, that's fine. I'll do
All right.
that.
thank you.
So the statements are going to be due the Sunday before, and our intent, again, is for the statements to go in the appendices, but also to summarize the committee recommendations in the body of the report itself.
I have a question. Is there a transmittal letter to the mayor being prepared to go with this report?
No, so that letter's not being prepared.
Okay.
Will there be an executive summary?
Yes.
The report itself?
So this would just be a publication for public review.
Yes. And it will be provided to the mayor directly, but not with any formal submission by the LAC. And just so,
Then how does the mayor know what our intent for him is? Just by reading the report?
we'll have a discussion with him at some point as well, the department as well, so he'll know.
And then also, don't forget about the vote that just occurred, right? So I think that's not gonna be just swept under the rug. I mean, it's clear that the committee members, through today's vote, will not allow, use landfills to be free of drinking
Well,
water.
but I think Tricia's, question is very valid. If it's not transmitted via a letter to the mayor, and depending upon how it's folded in to the executive summary and/or report, it may or may not be clear, unless there is something that says, "Dear Mayor, by the way, let me bring these specific points up to you that came out of this committee, which is their hot buttons." If you don't do that, then Mike Formby is gonna read it and say, "Oh, by the way, they couldn't come up with anything, so you figure it out."
Okay,
So, I think that's, I don't know,
okay.
No, I
thank you.
agree. No,
Thank you.
that's totally,
So
yeah.
I'm gonna do Josh right here, asking him if, if we can be sure to make it clear. And so when they have the chance to review what you folks are writing, make sure that it's clear. And if it's not clear enough, then we still have an opportunity to make it clearer through meeting number 8.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
We'll discuss it, yeah, and then we'll bring it up in the meeting. The only other thing that I wanted to stress here, so when we provide the sections to you for review, we'll be providing it publicly because of sunshine law, so anybody from the public will have access to that on the website, and I'll send out the email if you're on the mailing list, I'll send that via the mailing.
Okay, sorry, I know there was a question out there, but I think the public comment period, Hale, right? We completed that.
I'm fine reopening public comment. I would like to hear from the public.
Okay. So if you don't mind coming up and, stating your name and.
It's a non-meeting, can we do the next one also, in addition to being in person?
Okay, I'll repeat it so that our microphones can pick up the question. So the question from the audience is if we can do meeting number 8 on Zoom as well, kind of like as a hybrid, rather than just fully in person. Josh?
So because of the short time between the last meeting and this one, and then the change in the laws, we weren't able to book a location that could do kind of a hybrid meeting. So we're looking into that. We've already started looking into it, so we're gonna try to do that for the next meeting, but again, things may change, and if I'm not able to get certain locations, but I'm trying.
Okay? All right, so adjournment, our favorite time. If there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn LAC meeting number 7?
I move to adjourn.
Suzanne, thank you. Any second?
second.
Thank you, Cynthia. Are there any objections? Hearing none, LAC meeting number 7 is adjourned at 4:04. Thanks very much for your time, and it's for you folks in the audience as well. And if you're viewing this at a later time, thank you for all your time and attention on this. I know it's a difficult
Thank you.
project. Thank you.
I'd love to have you on this.
Good seeing you again.